Deputy Ellis.
One of the biggest crises facing us today is one of homelessness. There are around 5,000 people in homelessness, and according to Focus Ireland, 7 new people a day are reporting. This is an 88% rise in rough sleepers. There is also a huge rise in people using the homeless services of Peter McVerry, Trust, Simon and Focus. This year there was a cut of 4.5 million in the Dublin homelessness services. That's from a budget that's 10.7% down on the budget. There is only a tiny number of people using there's only a tiny number of new public social housing being delivered. And on top of this, approved housing bodies are struggling to find credit. There are 100,000 people in mortgage distress and approximately 29,000 on rent to buy. All this are combined with the 112,000 people that are on the housing waiting lists. With RAS and rent supplement, there is a further 110,000 who are not properly housed. Recent cuts to rent supplement have added to the threat of homelessness, as well as some landlords under RAS seeking properties back even though contracts are in place. The local authorities cannot cope with the numbers and are even suggesting to people to report to their homeless section. It's a terrible tragedy to lose one's home, but to end up in a B&B or a homeless shelter with your family and away from the services and community supports such as schools compounds an already tragic situation. This government made quite a fanfare of rededicating themselves to a deadline of ending long-term homelessness and rough sleeping by 2016. I've welcomed this. It is a realisable goal and a good target to set. It should be a priority for government to end. Maybe it is a priority for Minister O'Sullivan, but it is certainly not for the government at large. All the major players in tackling homelessness agree. The solution is a political one. It requires political will and the dedication to put funds where they are needed. Allowing homelessness to spiral further out of control is actually more costly in the long term than really dedicating funds to reach the target set for 2016. The Minister has rightly talked about a housing-led approach, but this does not seem to be the course being followed, certainly not in a sustainable fashion, which meets the needs of those coming out of homelessness.
Thank you, Deputy. Call on Minister of State Cannon to reply.
Thank you. Unfortunately, the Minister for Housing and Planning, Jan O'Sullivan, TD, isn't available to take this debate today, but she has asked me to thank all the deputies for providing the opportunity to discuss the issue of homelessness and our government's response to it. Dublin Simon has reported through the national media that 85 people were sleeping rough in Dublin city centre on the 3rd of September just gone. This figure is comparable to the count of rough sleepers conducted in April of this year, organised by the Dublin Region Homeless Consultative Forum, and which found that there were 94 persons confirmed as sleeping rough on the night in question. And these rough sleeper figures indicate a significant challenge in dealing with the complexity of the homelessness issue and the difficulties in finding answers to it. Rough sleeping is monitored closely county-wide, but particularly in Dublin, and the problem of rough sleeping is very limited outside of Dublin, with Cork, Waterford, Limerick and Galway City Councils reporting sufficient bed capacity on a nightly basis, and that there was nobody sleeping rough due to a lack of a bed. The Dublin Region's outreach team works on an ongoing basis to engage with all individuals sleeping rough, with a specific goal of moving people into accommodation through Dublin City Council's Central Placement Service. Indeed, Dublin City Council commenced a public awareness campaign earlier this week to allow members of the public to contact the outreach team about persons sleeping rough, with a view to moving people into temporary accommodation and onto independent living. The priority of this government, as has been identified by the deputies opposite, is to ensure that homeless people have access to secure, stable, appropriate accommodation. It's not acceptable that people should sleep on the streets of our cities and towns, and while the immediate hardship of sleeping rough may be solved through emergency accommodation, that isn't a viable long-term solution. The recently published homelessness policy statement outlined the government's aim to end long-term homelessness by the end of 2016, and I want to assure Deputy Ellis that Minister O'Sullivan, in setting out her ambition to end homelessness by 2016, has the full support of the government in meeting that target. The statement emphasises a housing-led approach, which is about accessing permanent housing as the primary response to all forms of homelessness. The availability and the supply of secure, affordable and adequate housing is essential in ensuring sustainable tenancies and ending long-term homelessness. And while it is clear that a proportion of funding must be used to provide sufficient bed capacity to accommodate those in need of emergency accommodation, it is equally important that resources are also channelled to deliver more permanent responses in a more focused and strategic way. In the Dublin region in 2012, 879 people moved from homelessness to independent living. And a set of indicators are now being used to demonstrate the dynamics of homelessness as it is addressed across the country. These indicators will give a clearer picture of homelessness in Ireland, and in quantifying its ongoing extent will support the bringing forward of realistic and practical solutions. As part of the new arrangements for funding housing authorities in dealing with homelessness in 2013, reports on indicators are being provided to the Department of the Environment, Community and Local Government.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Ellis.
Thank you, Minister, for your response. I suppose since 2008, there has been a cut of almost £1 billion in the housing budget. NAMA has only delivered 400 units. Dublin City Council next year will only build 18 houses, leaving aside the regenerations. This is an absolute tragedy. Local authorities are not able to turn over their properties. They don't have money to turn over their properties. So where did we go to get the housing? A housing-led approach is one thing, but we need housing to adopt our housing-led approach, and that's the problem. I've been dealing now on the ground with people who are losing their houses. Banks are looking to repossess them. They're coming from different parts of the country, and they're being told you have to go into a homeless situation. That is happening more and more all the time. Deputy Humphreys and me, we've had time out of number. The amount of times we've seen a solution to homelessness and documents being produced that this was going to solve homelessness. We could paper the walls with them. But really, we have to get real. If we don't build more social housing, we are into a major tragedy. And I cannot see how this figure can be reached in 2016. I cannot see, on the basis of what we're doing, how we are going to get to that. Okay.
Deputy Minister of State to conclude.
I agree wholeheartedly with the deputies when they state that the number of rough sleepers is only a symptom, an indication of a far more deeply rooted problem. But the fact that the number of rough sleepers is slowly but surely reducing would give one certainly some hope that the overall issue of homelessness is being addressed in a very meaningful way. The very fact that 880 people moved last year from homelessness to independent living, again, is another very strong indication that this government has every intention of meeting its aim to end long-term homelessness by the end of 2016. Homelessness funding, in a time when resources are very, very limited indeed, has been substantially protected over the past number of years, and this fact is important in the context of the wide-scale pressure for reductions in government spending across all departments. And the Department of the Environment, Community and Local Government has been overseeing state and local government expenditure exceeding €50 million a year in respect of the running costs of homeless facilities and associated services. There is also considerable capital investment going into homeless services on an annual basis. And in addition, and over and above that, the HSE is spending over €30 million in respect of health and personal social care related supports. I just want to reiterate once again, the government has every intention of meeting that target, and Minister O'Sullivan has the full support of the government in meeting it. The significant improvements that have been made over the last 24 months, I believe, are a strong indication that we will meet that target by 2016.